Cold stone echoed every word, yet the silence between them roared louder. I sat at the head of the council table, back straight, fingers drumming against the carved wolf insignia that stretched across its surface. They watched me like vultures, waiting for a crack in my control. I gave them none. "Your reign cannot stand forever without an heir," one of the gray-haired nobles pressed. "The packs grow restless. They demand stability. A Luna." I let the word hang, heavy as chains. A Luna. To them, it meant a crown-bound bride, a pawn to cement alliances. To me, it meant weakness. I remembered the way my father's enemies gutted him, because he loved too much, trusted too easily. His mate's death had hollowed him until his throne fell with him. "Stability," I said evenly, "comes from fear, not from parading some omega at my side." My voice was iron, each syllable deliberate. Fear holds them loyal. Fear keeps them silent. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some agreed. Others leaned forward, eyes sharp with hunger. They wanted more than fear. They wanted control over me. Another counselor cleared his throat. "Still, appearances matter. Tomorrow night's auction." I cut him off with a glare, sharp enough to silence the room. "You'd have me choose a mate the way you choose cattle? Bought and branded before the pack?" "No," he replied, lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. "We'd have you remind them who commands even the lowest among us. Attend. Make a choice. Show them your throne is not empty beside you." The fortress air seemed colder, pressing against my skin like frost. My wolf stirred under my ribs, restless, as if sensing something I couldn't name. I forced him down. Marriage, mates, bonds. They were distractions, openings for knives to slip between ribs. Still, I saw the truth in their scheme. Refusing would only spark more whispers. That the Alpha King feared binding himself, that he ruled with claws, but no crown beside him. I leaned back, lips curling into a humorless smile. "Very well. I'll attend your auction." My voice was quiet but final, like the slam of a coffin lid. But don't mistake attendance for surrender. The nobles shifted, satisfied enough to believe they had won something. Fools. Inside, though, a question clawed at me, one I couldn't silence. Why did my wolf feel like the night ahead had already chosen me? The stench of desperation clung to the air. Sweat, fear, perfume too sweet to hide the truth. Torches spat smoke against the vaulted ceiling, throwing shadows that twisted like chains around the trembling omegas lined on the block. I sat in the high seat, my presence enough to silence half the room, though the rest filled the air with jeers and bids. Men shouted prices as if they were buying horses. Women trembled as numbers climbed, their futures sold with a raised hand. My jaw tightened. This spectacle disgusted me. Not because I pitied them, pity was poison, but because it laid bare the hunger of men who believed worth could be weighed in coin. "Fine stock tonight," a counselor murmured at my side, his lips curling in satisfaction. I ignored him. My face remained carved from stone, unreadable. Cold indifference was my weapon here, and I wielded it well. Inside, though, my wolf paced, uneasy. Another girl was hauled forward. Her eyes darted to the crowd, wide and wet, as if searching for mercy. None came. When no bid rose, laughter broke out, sharp and cruel. I should have looked away. This was beneath me, beneath a king. Yet something twisted in my chest. Then I saw her. She stood smaller than the rest, shoulders hunched, hair a dark curtain hiding most of her face. The auctioneer sneered, shoving her forward. "No pack wanted this one. Worthless, weak. Who'll take her off my hands?" The hall erupted. Mockery, jeers, cruel laughter that scraped like knives. She flinched but did not cry. Her chin lifted, barely, a flicker of defiance in the wreck of humiliation. And just like that, everything changed. My wolf slammed against my ribs, teeth bared, a guttural snarl tearing through me, though no sound left my throat. Mine. The word burned through my skull. raw and absolute. I gripped the arm of my chair until wood groaned beneath my hand. I tried to smother the instinct, bury it under reason, under the cold logic that had kept me alive. But the harder I fought, the louder it became. Mine. Mine. The auctioneer laughed. No one. Not even for scraps? My vision blurred red. My wolf's answer surged like thunder, demanding release. And before I could stop myself, the thought coiled into words I had never meant to speak. The hall grew quieter with every passing second. No hands lifted, no bids rose. The Omega remained on the block, her head bowed, shoulders trembling, yet her silence louder than the jeers. The auctioneer's voice cracked. No one? Not a single coin for this one? Laughter followed, sharp, cutting, merciless. She's nothing, someone shouted. Another spat on the floor. Better to let the rogues have her. Something inside me snapped. Heat tore through my chest, my wolf clawing, howling, demanding. My vision sharpened until I saw every line of her shaking frame, every bruise on her pale skin, every strand of hair trembling against her cheek. She was breaking, and I couldn't look away. The words were out before I thought, raw and unrestrained. She's mine. Silence. The room froze, air sucked out, as though the walls themselves had heard something impossible. Every gaze swung toward me, disbelief painted on every face. The auctioneer stammered, his mouth hanging open. Your Majesty? I rose from my chair, slow and deliberate, power flooding the space until no one dared move. My wolf pressed hard against my skin, satisfied, rumbling. I said, my voice dropped, low and lethal, she's mine. Gasps rippled. The crowd broke into a frenzy of whispers, hissing like serpents in the dark. The Alpha King claimed her. An Omega slave? Why waste his throne on that? Their shock washed over me, but it was the fire in my veins I couldn't ignore. My wolf prowled, possessive, exultant, while my own mind reeled. I had sworn never to bind myself, never to claim. And yet, before the entire realm, I had done it without hesitation. The Omega, Celeste, lifted her head at last. Her eyes found mine through the haze of torchlight, wide and filled with something I couldn't name. Fear, hope, confusion. A question I didn't dare answer. The whispers grew sharper, cutting into the edges of my control. Why her? What game is he playing? No one wanted her? So why does he? I didn't have the answer. All I knew was this. My wolf had chosen, and the hall would burn before I let anyone take her from me. The fortress gates groaned open, iron teeth parting to swallow us whole. Celeste walked 2 paces behind me, her steps light but uneven, the faint scrape of her bare shoes echoing off stone. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The council trailed in my shadow, silent now, though I felt their whispers waiting to strike the moment my back turned. They had wanted a show at the auction, but not this. Not a king bound to an Omega they all called worthless. Inside, the air carried the chill of old stone and fire smoke. My home, once a sanctuary of solitude, of control, already felt different. Her scent clung to it, faint but insistent, pulling at something inside me I didn't want to name. My wolf pressed forward, restless, hungry. Bond her. Now. His demand surged with every heartbeat, every breath she took in my walls. My fingers curled into fists to stop the tremor. No. I would not yield to instinct. Bonds made kings weak. Love had broken my father, had left his throne drenched in blood. I ruled with fear because fear never faltered. Still. I caught her reflection in the firelit glass of a window as we passed. Shoulders drawn in, eyes down, yet not empty. There was defiance buried beneath her silence, a spark refusing to die. My wolf growled in approval. I forced my gaze ahead. You'll be housed in the East Wing. You'll obey the guards. You'll keep out of sight. My voice cut sharp, more command than welcome. She hesitated before whispering, "Yes, Your Majesty." Her voice was soft, frayed, but it carried weight. A weight I didn't want pressing into my chest. Behind us, I heard one counselor murmur to another, low but not low enough, "She'll be his downfall. Mark me. The Pax will see her weakness and tear him apart." My wolf snarled so violently I had to grind my teeth to keep from shifting right there. The urge to rip their throats out battled with the iron discipline that had kept me alive. I pushed open the heavy doors of the hall and stepped aside, forcing Celeste to walk through first. My fortress had never held a queen, and I swore it never would. Yet the moment her shadow crossed my threshold, I knew. My ordinary world was gone. I went to her chamber. She sat on the edge of the narrow bed, shoulders taut, eyes lowered but not broken. The chamber was silent except for the faint crackle of the torch outside her door, and yet the air between us burned with something neither of us named. I had expected tears, pleas, submission. Instead, Celeste trembled in my presence, but not with surrender. It was fear tangled with something sharper, something that stung like defiance. "You stare as if I owe you thanks," she whispered at last, her voice fragile but steady enough to cut. My jaw tightened. She should have been grateful. Any other Omega in her place would have been. Instead, she pushed, testing the limits of a bond I had never meant to claim. "I don't need thanks," I said, stepping closer, my shadow falling across her. "I need obedience." Her gaze lifted then, locking with mine. There was no challenge in her eyes, not outright, but there was a question. Why me? I felt it pierce deeper than any spoken word. My wolf pressed forward, desperate to answer her, desperate to claim. I turned away, fists curling. I couldn't give her that truth, because I didn't have it. Outside the chamber, a whisper of movement brushed the silence. Too soft for human ears, but not for mine. My wolf stiffened, a low growl curling in my chest. I moved toward the door, senses sharpening. A heartbeat later, steel glinted in the torchlight, slender, deliberate. A knife slid across the floor, meant for the shadows at her feet. Celeste gasped, stumbling back, her hand flying to her mouth. Assassins. Already. Not because of who she was, but because of what she was to me. They wanted to sever this bond before it rooted, to strike at the Alpha King through the Omega no one wanted. Rage flooded me, hot and wild. My wolf clawed free, demanding blood. "Stay behind me," I growled, my body already shifting toward the threat. The door burst inward, and steel met fire. The blade came out of shadow like a promise of death. It was an insider. I moved before thought finished. Reflex, old, brutal, necessary. My hand closed on the hilt of the dagger I kept beneath my cloak, the metal cold and sure. Torchlight spilled across the floor, painting the intruder in streaks of gold and blood. He lunged for the bed, aim true, but my world narrowed to one motion, one need. Protect her. He never saw the second blade. He never saw the way I stepped through the air, because predators do not announce themselves. I met steel with steel. There was a taste of iron, my own, on my tongue. There was the sickening sweet of fear in the assassin's eyes when he realized he'd miscounted his odds. Celeste stumbled back against the wall, hands over her mouth, her breath hitched in ragged little pulls. I could smell her, lavender and smoke, and beneath that, something raw, something honest that made my gut ache in a way I'd learned to hate. The thought of her blood soaking these stones, no, not on my watch. He came at me again. A flash, a desperate slash that would have found her throat. I moved like the wolf I hold beneath skin. My arm arced, the blade in my fist sang a clean, terrible note. Flesh opened. He made a sound I'd only ever heard in battle. Surprise, then pain, then the wet gasp as life tore away. Blood spattered my knuckles, dark, hot. I tasted it. And hate rose with it. Hate for the men who used people as weapons. Hate for the council that called her worthless and then pointed at her when they wanted me weakened. Rage filled me, but it was not blind. It was precise. It was protection. When the last breath left him, the hall outside was a storm of shouts. But here in the small room, only the hiss of the torch and her small, shuddering sobs remained. I turned to her, and she stood there drenched in fear, mouth a thin line, eyes enormous and dark. "Are you—" She tried to speak, and the word died on her lips. She looked at my hands, saw the blood, and something like understanding flickered across her face, fear tangled with the first thin thread of something else, gratitude, shock, a new kind of dread. My wolf exhaled through me. It vibrated in my bones, a low, satisfied rumble that made the air feel heavier. For a heartbeat, I let myself be what the wolf wanted, possessive, fierce, utterly claim straight and unashamed. "Stay behind me," I told her. My voice was hoarse. It was not the command it had been days ago. It was a promise. The fortress would hear of this. The council would sharpen knives and tongues. The men who'd paid for the assassin would not stop. She lifted her chin just a fraction. No thank you. No tears. Something stubborn and small opened in her eyes. It could have been fear, it could have been resolve. My wolf's voice was louder now, less a whisper beneath skin, more a drum in the chest. "She is mine. You cannot run from this." The council chamber smelled of old wine and older ambitions. They sat like vultures on carved chairs, faces polished to false concern. I stepped into their circle and felt every lie in the room like a blade against my skin. They had expected me to be browbeaten into reason. They had expected me to bargain, to trade an omega for peace. "Your Majesty," Counselor Varen began, voice oily, "this arrangement, this scandal, cannot stand. The people will not accept an unwashed slave at the king's side. For the kingdom's good, she must be removed." My hands curled around the edge of the table until the wood creaked. I tasted iron on my tongue again, the echo of the blade in Celeste's chamber. I did not flinch. I would not show the crack, not here, not now. "Removed?" I repeated, and let the single word hang like a challenge. "Cast out? Sold again?" My voice was flat, but there was edge under it, steel spun from years of surviving knives in the dark. Varen's smile thinned. "Not sold, Majesty. Protected. Hidden. For the kingdom." He spread his hands like a man offering charity, but his eyes were wolves. "You must see that, to preserve stability." I slammed my palm on the table, and the sound cut them down like a blade. "No." The single syllable was a summons. "She stays." They blinked as if I'd struck them. Mouths opened. Some whispered, some scoffed. They had thought fear would make me bend. They had misread me. They had misread what my wolf had already chosen. "Your claim undermines tradition," Counselor Merrick insisted. "It invites ridicule. It gives our enemies cause. Think of the border lords. Think of the packs who will see weakness and move." I felt the old weight, the throne's history, the names carved into stone, the ghosts of those who'd fallen because love had made them soft. My father's ghost taught me silence, taught me that feeling was a weapon used against rulers. Yet when I closed my eyes, I saw her, Celeste, standing on the auction block, defiance like a small, bright ember behind fear. I saw the way she didn't beg when no one wanted her. I felt my wolf's pleasure at that ember, and something I could not name tightened my chest. "Then let the border lords test me," I said slowly. "Let them watch the king stand with the woman he claims. If they choose to test us, they will find a wall of teeth." My voice calmed as it cut. Every man in that room heard it. They understood. I would fight. Still, murmurs rustled. They must feed the rumor mills. They must plant seeds. I watched one of them, Counselor Edrin, lean close to the doorway where the servants' gallery sat. The servants whispered, and then the woman, Celeste's maid, stifled a gasp. That sound reached me, carried on the draft. She heard them. She must have. The thought struck at me with a needle's precision. She heard them plotting to cast her out, for the kingdom's good. I did not move. My silence was louder than any sword. My wolf circled, low and hungry. I had declared she was mine in a crowded hall. Now the court would try to unmake that claim, and I would not let them. The training yard rang with the clash of wood against wood, sharp cracks echoing off the stone walls. I stood in the shadows of the archway, arms crossed, every muscle tight with the effort of keeping my expression still. Levi circled her, a wooden staff in his hands, his movements quick but measured. Celeste gripped her own staff too tightly, her knuckles pale. She swung, missed, stumbled, and fell into the dirt. The guards lining the walls chuckled low, cruel sounds that made my wolf snarl inside me. "Again!" Levi barked. She pushed herself up, slow but steady. Dust clung to her dress, hair plastered to her cheek with sweat, but she didn't look at me. She didn't look at anyone. She lifted the staff again and tried. "Too stiff," Levi said, knocking it easily from her hands. The staff skittered across the yard. She followed, scooped it up, and raised it once more. She fell again, and again, and again. Each time she rose. I told myself it was strategy. She needed strength, needed to defend herself because assassins had already slipped blades toward her door. That was why I ordered this. Not because I wanted to see fire in her eyes. Not because each time she stood back up, something twisted warm in my chest. When she finally landed a glancing strike against Levi's side, his grunt of surprise filled the yard. For the first time, I saw her mouth twitch, almost a smile. My wolf rumbled with approval. She learns, she fights, she is not weak. I shifted my stance, trying to hide the pride building in me. This was not love. This was survival. She was a pawn who needed sharpening, nothing more. That was the lie I repeated in my skull, but my heart betrayed me, beating faster each time she refused to stay down. "Better," Levi admitted, lowering his staff. "Again tomorrow. You'll learn." She nodded, chest heaving, sweat streaking her brow. She had earned that nod, earned it with blood on her palms and grit in her stance. As she walked past me, Marlene, the maid assigned to her, leaned in close enough for only me to hear. Her voice was soft, almost reverent. "Your queen," she whispered, "has a wolf stronger than she knows." My pulse stuttered. I turned sharply, but Celeste was already walking on, head high despite the dirt. And for the first time, I wondered if fate had given me more than a bond. The great hall blazed with firelight, goblets raised high as laughter echoed against the vaulted stone. Platters of meat, steaming bread, and sweet wines filled the tables, but I tasted nothing. My gaze kept sliding to Celeste at my side, her posture small but steady, her eyes darting like a doe in a wolf's den. Counselors watched her too, some with disdain, others with a hunger I didn't trust. They smiled, toasted, whispered. My wolf prowled inside me, restless, every instinct sharpened by the thought that she was surrounded by vipers dressed in silks. A servant filled her cup. The faintest ripple of scent hit me. Metallic, bitter, wrong, poison. Before she could lift it, I snatched the goblet from her hand and took a sip. The taste was ash and rot. My throat burned as though lined with fire. My vision swam. Rage boiled in my veins, fighting the venom that already clawed at my chest. Gasps rose around the table as I staggered, hand gripping the armrest. My wolf surged forward, wild, desperate to keep me upright, desperate to keep her safe. Celeste's cry cut through the din, soft but piercing, as she reached for me. "Travis!" I shoved her back, shielding her with my own body, every muscle screaming to hold the poison at bay. "Stay behind me." The words came raw, more growl than command. Levi lunged toward the servant, dragging him to the floor. Wine spilled across the rushes like blood. Counselors shouted over one another, some in feigned outrage, others in thinly veiled satisfaction. Poison, in my own hall, in my own hand. Celeste pressed forward, trying to brace me as my legs buckled. The world blurred at the edges, but I held her close, refusing to let her be exposed. The thought of her lying cold on these stones ignited a fury that burned hotter than the venom in my veins. I forced a ragged breath past my teeth. "You will not touch her," I spat at the room, voice hoarse but carrying. "Not while I breathe." Levi's blade pressed to the servant's throat. The man babbled, swore he was paid, swore the order came from higher. Already the whispers swelled, eager, poisonous as the drink. "She's a spy. She was planted. She'll be the death of him." I saw the way Celeste flinched, the way her eyes filled with hurt she tried to hide. And in that moment, I understood the truth. Keeping her weak only made her prey. If she was to survive, she would need more than my shield. She would need her own claws, and I would see them sharpened. I was feeling better now. The content I took wasn't much to cause great damage. The dungeon smelled of damp stone and betrayal. Chains clinked as the servant who had poured the poisoned wine sagged against the wall, bloodied from Levi's fist. I stood before him, every inch of me cold, though fire roared in my chest. "You've served in this fortress for years," I said, voice low, dangerous. "So tell me, why poison her?" The man spat blood, then a broken laugh. "Not for gold, for justice, for the bloodline you've chained yourself to." My grip tightened on his collar, dragging him closer. "What bloodline?" He grinned through split lips. "She's not what she seems. That girl you call yours, she carries royal blood, the kind that makes enemies rally and kingdoms burn. My lords say she'll undo you. They'll make sure of it." His words hit harder than his poison ever had. Royal blood. Rival blood. My wolf snarled inside me, not in denial but in furious defense. She is ours. She is truth. She is mate. But the man's laughter echoed, feeding doubt like a poison all its own. If she carried a bloodline my enemies coveted, then she wasn't just a weakness. They could twist her into a weapon sharp enough to cut my throne apart. I released him with a shove. He crumpled, still laughing, until Levi silenced him with a blow that left the dungeon quiet. I turned and climbed the steps, every stride heavy. My wolf pushed against me, demanding trust, demanding I go to her. But the man's words clung like shadows. "She'll undo you." At the top of the stair, I found her waiting in the hall. Celeste, pale in the torchlight, hands clasped tight, eyes searching mine. She must have heard the whispers already. Her lips parted, trembling, but the words came steady. "Do you regret choosing me?" The question cut deeper than any blade. My first instinct was denial, fierce and absolute. My wolf howled for me to claim her, to crush the question before it stole her spirit. Yet the king in me, the man who had seen his father's ruin, hesitated. I stepped closer, close enough to see the fear she tried to hide. My voice broke low, rough. "No, Celeste, I don't regret it. But the world will try to make me." Her eyes flickered with hurt, hope, something between. And in that moment, I knew the battle outside these walls was nothing compared to the one within me. The library smelled of dust and ash, shelves lined with scrolls and leather-bound records that outlived kings. I hadn't stepped into this room in years. Tonight, I hunted answers with the desperation of a man whose throne tilted beneath his feet. The assassin's words had coiled in my skull like vipers. Royal blood. Rival blood. I needed truth. I tore through old chronicles, scanning lineages, forgotten alliances, names inked in a time when pacts crowned kings with fire and oath instead of fear. Hours passed, candles melted low, until I found it. An ancient record, brittle beneath my fingers. House Arden. The royal pack of the East. Thought slaughtered in the massacre 19 years ago. Only one name left unmarked by death. A child, Celeste Arden. My chest tightened. She wasn't just an unwanted Omega abandoned on an auction block. She was heir to a bloodline my enemies would kill to resurrect. A banner they could raise to fracture my kingdom. My wolf pressed hard against me, not with denial, but with a savage possessiveness that shook my bones. Heir or not, she is ours. Bloodline means nothing. Mate means everything. But the king in me reeled. If the nobles knew, they would tear her from me. If the border lords believed, war would follow. My claim had not only bound me to her, it had bound me to a war I could not escape. The doors burst open. The council filed in, their faces sharp with victory, as if they already knew what I had just discovered. Varen spoke first, his voice smug. "So you've uncovered it at last. She is no nameless stray, Majesty. She is Arden, the blood of your enemies. And if you keep her, you invite every rival pack to test your throne." Merrick leaned forward, hands steepled. "Discard her now, and your crown remains intact. Keep her, and you lose the kingdom." My pulse thundered. They wanted me to cast her aside, feed her to wolves, erase her like she was nothing more than ink in a ledger. I remembered her eyes, wide and unyielding at the auction block, the way she rose every time Levi knocked her down. The girl who had nothing and still refused to break. I closed the book with a snap, my voice low, dangerous. She is mine. The council erupted in outrage, and just like that, the game changed. The training yard was near empty, night pressing cold against the stones. Only the ring of wood against wood broke the silence. I stopped in the shadows, watching her. Celeste stood in the dirt, hair damp with sweat, palms raw from gripping the staff Levi had left her. No guards, no audience. She trained alone, each swing heavy, each stumble met with another rise. She moved like someone who had already died once and refused to stay buried. Bruises painted her arms, a shallow cut bled at her temple, but her eyes, moon above, her eyes burned. She wasn't broken. She wasn't cowed. Every strike she made screamed defiance, even if no one but me saw it. My wolf pressed against me, voice fierce and certain. She is strength, not weakness, ours. But the king inside me argued, heir of Arden, a name soaked in rebellion. The council's warnings weren't lies. Her bloodline could split the realm, tear down everything I had built, the throne or the mate. One demanded sacrifice of the other. She staggered, nearly falling. My body lurched forward before I caught myself. She didn't see me, didn't know I watched. When she raised the staff again, her shoulders shook, but her stance held. I thought of my father's downfall, the way grief hollowed him when my mother died. He had clung to love, and love had undone him. I had sworn never to repeat it. Yet here I stood, torn apart by the sight of a trembling Omega refusing to yield. The staff slipped from her grip at last. She bent, chest heaving, but didn't curse, didn't cry. She simply picked it back up. And in that quiet act, I felt my defenses cracking, one stone at a time. Bootsteps echoed behind me. Levi's voice was low. "The council calls for you, Majesty." I turned. His expression was grim. "They've gathered in the high chamber. They demand your decision. Cast her aside, or face dethronement." The night air thickened, heavy as chains. I looked back once more. Celeste stood beneath the torches, scarred, bloodied, unbroken, and I knew this choice was no longer political. It was war between the man I swore to be and the mate fate had carved into my soul. The high chamber bristled with voices, each one sharpened to a blade. Counselors lined the table, nobles crowding the edges, all of them waiting for me to kneel to their demand. Candles bled wax-down iron sconces, their flames flickering like the tension in the air. Varen leaned forward, face smug with certainty. "You know what must be done, Majesty. Send her away. End this farce before the kingdom fractures." "Discard her," Merrick added, voice slick with false concern. "Do this, and you keep your throne. Refuse, and the lords will rise against you." The words crashed like waves against stone. I stood at the head of the chamber, every eye fixed on me, waiting for the Alpha King to surrender. But surrender had never been in my blood. I thought of Celeste in the yard, bruised but unbroken. I thought of her lifting her chin in defiance even as the world mocked her. I thought of the knife slid under her door, the poison in her cup, and the way my wolf had roared each time. Mine. I straightened, letting silence fall heavy until the air itself seemed to hold its breath. You want my answer? My voice cut across the room, low but steady. Varen smirked, certain he'd won. Yes, Majesty. I let the words strike like a blade. Then hear it. Celeste Arden is not weakness. She is not shame. She is my Luna. Gasps erupted, outrage spilling like fire. Some counselors leapt to their feet, shouting about treason, about ruin. Others shrank back, eyes wide with disbelief. I stepped forward, every inch the Alpha King, and let my wolf's power roll through the chamber, pressing into every coward's spine. Let the packs whisper. Let the border lords test me. I will not cast her aside. Any man who dares move against her, moves against me. For a moment, silence. Then the uproar broke, louder than before. I caught fragments. Rebellion. Unfit. The throne undone. They thought they could frighten me with threats of war. They had forgotten. I was war. Levi's hand brushed the hilt of his sword at my side, already sensing what I did. The nobles wouldn't stop at words. Tonight they would begin to sharpen their rebellion, and I had just given them reason enough to strike. The night split open with screams. Steel clashed against steel, and the clang of the iron gates forced apart echoed through the fortress like a death knell. The roar of traitors followed, hundreds of them, their boots pounding the cobblestones like war drums. Levi burst into the high chamber, blade dripping, blood already streaking down his arm. Majesty, coup! The council's dogs have opened the gates! The chamber exploded in chaos. Nobles who had plotted minutes ago now scattered like rats, some fumbling for hidden daggers, others running for safety. Varen's smug grin was gone, replaced with the ashen face of a man realizing his gamble had unleashed fire he couldn't control. I ripped my sword free from its sheath, the steel ringing like a vow. Rage ignited in my chest, burning white-hot. Stay with her! I barked at Levi, already moving toward the doors. The fortress groaned with the sounds of betrayal. Battle cries echoing off stone, shields shattering, the wet slice of blades cutting through flesh. Shadows flickered against the walls as torches guttered in the draft of war. The air reeked of smoke, sweat, and blood. I cut my way into the hall, the wolf inside me surging. One mercenary lunged. I met him head-on, driving steel into his ribs until his scream choked out. Another came fast. My blade flashed, severing his neck, spraying the walls crimson. I moved like a storm-given form, every strike brutal, unrelenting, unmerciful. But the deeper I pressed, the clearer it became. This wasn't simply a coup. This was a war for Celeste. Every poisoned whisper, every knife in the dark, every smirk at council had led here, to this siege, to this bloodbath. Then I heard it. A cry. Her voice. Celeste. I spun. She wasn't cowering in the shadows. She was in the heart of the fight. A mercenary's knife arced toward her throat. Levi locked in combat too far away to reach her. My heart froze. But Celeste moved first. She swung the wooden staff she had trained with, the crack of impact splitting the din. The mercenary's wrist snapped sideways, his blade clattered to the ground. She struck again, the staff splintering across his jaw. He crumpled, blood spilling across the stones. Celeste stood over him, chest heaving, eyes blazing, bruised, trembling, but unbroken. Levi cut down his foes and shouted, "Stay behind me, girl!" But she didn't. She seized the fallen dagger, her grip clumsy yet defiant, and raised it in shaking hands. Pride surged so fierce it nearly brought me to my knees. My wolf howled with it. Not burden, not prey, equal. "Celeste!" I roared, cleaving through another who charged her flank. She met my eyes, fire mirrored in her gaze, and for one heartbeat the chaos blurred. We were storm and steel, Alpha and Luna fighting as one. The battle spilled into the great hall. Columns shook as torches toppled, fire racing across the rushes. Smoke curled through the rafters, screams and steel ringing in every corner. My guards held their line, but the mercenaries pressed harder, trained to die without fear. Still, Celeste fought. She moved with desperation, not skill, but each thrust carried refusal. Refusal to yield, to be preyed upon, to be erased. Every strike of her blade was survival written in blood. I carved through 3 more, my arms burning, blade slick, breath ragged. Still, they came. Then the doors thundered. The mercenaries fell silent as a tall figure stepped through the smoke. Black armor glistened in firelight, crimson cloak dragging across the blood-slick floor. His scarred jaw was set in a predator's calm, his gray eyes gleaming like cold iron. Alpha Ronan Calethorn. The Ironfang warlord. The shadow behind the poison and the knives. The man who would see my throne fall and my mate bound to him like a trophy. The hall stilled, as if even the flames dared not move. Ronan's gaze lingered on me for only a moment before sliding, slow and deliberate, to Celeste. His lips curled into a cruel smile. "Your counsel served me well," he said, voice slicing through the silence. "They opened your gates with eager hands. It seems your own house longed for your fall." His tone dripped with mockery, but his eyes burned with hunger, for her. He raised his hand, and his warriors stilled. So it's true. The Alpha King shackled himself to an Arden heir, the last of her line. Surrender her to me, and I will call them back. No more blood, no more fire, just peace. The silence after was heavier than steel. Even my loyal guards faltered, their breaths caught, as if they too wondered if I would trade her for survival. Celeste stiffened, dagger trembling. She didn't beg. She didn't plead. She only met my eyes, fear buried beneath that same ember of defiance I had seen since the night she stood on the auction block. My wolf snarled, so loud the stone itself seemed to vibrate. Mine. Not for surrender, not for peace. I stepped forward, raising my blood-soaked blade. "You want her?" My voice cracked like thunder. "Come and die for her." Ronan's smile sharpened, cruel satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. So be it. And just like that, the hall became hell again. The clash of steel reignited, louder, harsher, as though Ronan's words had split the fortress open. My guards surged, blades raised, but their eyes still flicked to me, waiting, fearing I might yield. For one heartbeat, I almost did. Not from weakness, but from the weight pressing on my chest, the throne, the crown, the blood of every wolf in these walls. If surrendering her could save them, if bending, just once, meant my people lived, wasn't that my duty? Ronan saw it. His smirk deepened. "Even kings break when their house burns. Give her to me and your kingdom will survive. Choose wisely." The words cut deep, because part of me believed him. The fear I had buried since the moment I claimed her rose like a tide, that she was not my salvation but my ruin. My hand tightened on my blade. My wolf snarled, refusing to bow, yet the man in me faltered. Then Celeste moved. She stepped from Levi's shadow, shoulders trembling but head high, dagger still clenched in her bruised hand. Smoke clung to her hair, blood streaked her gown, yet her eyes, her eyes, shone like firelight through the dark. She looked at me, not at Ronan, and her voice rang clear over the din. "I am yours, Travis, not his." The hall fell away. My enemies, the fire, even the crown itself, none of it mattered. Only her. Only the choice she had already made. The fear broke like glass inside me. My wolf surged, not with rage but with certainty. I was not shackled. I was not ruined. I was whole, because she had chosen me. I lifted my blade, firelight glinting across bloodied steel. My voice carried steady now, a vow forged in war. You will not have her, Ronan. You will not take what is mine. Ronan's eyes narrowed, his calm cracking for the first time. And then, war horns blared beyond the walls, long and mournful, shaking the stones beneath our feet. Reinforcements. His army had not yet begun to fight. The true war had only just arrived. The war horn still echoed when the walls trembled. A second thunder followed, the slam of rams against gates, the grind of ladders thrown against stone. Ronan had not come alone. The Iron Fang army descended in full, a black tide swelling against the fortress. The great hall became a slaughterhouse. Mercenaries pressed harder, fighting with the frenzy of men promised kingdoms for blood. My guards faltered under the weight, shields splintering, voices hoarse with fury and fear. The air thickened with smoke, screams, and the iron stench of fresh death. I carved through them, each strike wild with rage. But for every man I felled, 3 more pushed forward. Levi bellowed orders, dragging Celeste behind a collapsing column, but even he staggered, his armor dented, his sword chipped to ruin. Hold the line, I roared, slamming an enemy into the wall with such force his skull cracked stone. My wolf surged, clawing at my chest, demanding I let go, shift fully, rip through flesh and bone until nothing stood. But the man in me clung on. If I lost myself here, Celeste would be alone. The fortress groaned above us. Smoke poured through cracks in the ceiling where fire had caught the rafters. Somewhere outside, battering rams struck again and again. Each blow rattled through the stone floor, each crash a countdown to ruin. Then the gates gave way. The doors of the outer yard exploded inward, iron hinges screeching as a flood of Iron Fang warriors stormed in. Their torches burned red with pitch, their war drums pounding in time with their boots. The line broke. Screams erupted as men were cut down, shields shattered, banners fell. My guards, loyal, desperate, threw themselves into the breach, but they were swallowed whole. Celeste's cry cut through the chaos. I spun. She was fighting, still fighting, dagger clumsy but defiant, her gown torn and stained with blood. A mercenary twice her size bore down on her. Levi lunged between them, his blade catching the strike, but another slammed into him from behind. He went to one knee, cursing, his blood splattering the stones. "Travis!" Celeste screamed, fear and fire in her voice. I plowed toward her, hacking through the wall of bodies. My sword split skulls, tore through armor, but they closed around me like a tide. Hands grabbed at my arms, blades glanced off my shoulders, teeth sank into my rage. My wolf howled, ripping through my veins, my body moving faster, harder, unstoppable. But still, I wasn't fast enough. Out of the smoke came chains, thick, iron-forged, looped with runes that glowed faintly against the firelight. Ronan's men hurled them over Celeste, dragging her arms tight to her sides. She thrashed, kicked, bit, but they bound her wrists, pulled her down, slammed her to the stone. "No!" My roar shook the rafters. I tore through the last 2 in front of me, splitting one clean down the chest, gutting the other with a backhand swing. Blood drenched me, hot and slick, and still I surged forward. But Ronan himself stepped into the breach. His blade met mine with a crash that rattled bone. Sparks flew as steel locked against steel. He pushed stronger than I expected, his grin cruel. "Kings fall, Travis. Tonight, so do you." I shoved back, snarling, forcing him away. My blade cut toward his throat. He twisted, caught it, drove a knee into my chest. Air burst from my lungs. I staggered only to meet his next strike head-on, the impact jolting up my arm. Behind him, Celeste screamed as chains cinched tighter, dragged by 3 men at once. She kicked one in the face, drew blood, but they pulled harder, binding her to the pillar like prey awaiting slaughter. Her eyes locked on mine, terror and defiance mingling in one look that tore me apart. "Travis!" she cried, voice breaking. Ronan slammed his hilt into my jaw, stars bursting across my vision. I reeled, barely blocking his next strike. He pressed hard, his blade grinding against mine, his breath hot against my face. She was never yours to keep. The Arden blood belongs to me. My wolf tore free with a snarl, my arms surging with savage strength. I shoved him off, swung wide, ripped a gash across his armor. He staggered but laughed, the sound dark and maddened. Yes, that's it. Bleed for her. Break for her. I didn't care. I only saw Celeste. But before I could cut through, the fortress shuddered. A section of the ceiling collapsed, fire and smoke pouring down. My guards scattered as rubble crushed men beneath it. The hall filled with choking ash. Through the haze, I saw them drag Celeste to her knees, chains cutting into her wrists. She fought until her skin tore, blood streaking her arms. Still, she didn't beg. She only screamed my name, raw and unrelenting, as they dragged her out of sight. No. My howl ripped through the fortress, half man, half wolf, a sound born of fury and despair. But the tide swallowed me. Blades pressed in, shields forced me back. Ronan's laughter cut through the smoke. My reign, my fortress, my mate, slipping away in the blaze. And then the horns sounded again, closer, louder, not ours, theirs. The fortress was falling, and Celeste was gone. The fires still burned when dawn crept over the battlements, smoke curling into a sky-choked gray. My fortress was half ash, my men broken and bloodied. Every breath tasted of defeat. They came slithering from the shadows then, the survivors of my council, cowards who had hidden while others bled. Their robes were torn, their faces pale, but their tongues were sharp as ever. It was her, Varen rasped, blood crusted at his lip. The girl, the Arden whelp. She conspired with Ronan to see you dead. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Lies, I thought, but the words dug like claws. Another noble stepped forward, bowing low. Majesty, we saw it. How quickly they bound her without resistance. She is his blood, his key. She betrayed you, and we bled for it. My wolf roared inside me, denial thundering, claws raking at my chest. Lies. She is ours. She would never. But the man in me faltered. The image seared into my mind. Celeste dragged away in chains, her voice lost in the smoke. Had she known Ronan's men would come? Was her presence in my hall the poison from the start? I slammed my fist into the arm of my throne, stone cracking under the force. The council flinched back, their whispers slithering into silence. Yet their words lingered, sinking teeth into my already bleeding doubt. Levi, bandaged and pale, stood near the pillars, his silence heavy. He had seen her fight. He had seen her bleed. But even he did not speak. The doubt was everywhere, pressing in until the chamber itself felt poisoned. At last they left, scattering like vermin, their whispers carried into the smoke-filled halls. I remained alone, the crown heavy as iron on my skull, the sword limp in my hand. The wolf inside me howled her name, but I pressed my hands over my ears, choking on the sound. Maybe they're right, I whispered into the emptiness. The words tasted like ash. Maybe love truly destroys kings. The torches flickered low, and the silence that followed was worse than any roar of war. The message came at dawn, carried by a broken guard Ronan had left alive only to deliver it. The parchment was smeared with ash and blood, but the words were carved with glee. Come to your walls, Alpha King. Witness what you have lost. I went. I had no choice. From the battlements I saw them, an Iron Fang war camp stretched across the valley, banners of black and red snapping in the wind. And in its center, bound to a post, was Celeste. Chains coiled around her arms and throat, glowing faintly with runes to hold her wolf at bay. Her gown hung in tatters, her skin streaked with dirt and blood, but her spine was straight, her head unbowed. Even across the distance, I felt her defiance burn through the smoke. Ronan rode before her astride a black steed, armored like a conqueror already crowned. His laughter rolled across the field, carried by horns and drums. "Behold your Luna, King Travis, the last Arden heir, the bloodline your crown cannot hold. She will not die today. No, she will live as mine. I will bite her, claim her. And when her blood carries my mark, every pack will kneel to me." The fortress behind me fell silent. Even my men, loyal, scarred, bloodied, stared with wide eyes. Because they knew it was true. If Ronan forced the bond, his power would be undeniable. My wolf tore itself raw, howling inside me, begging me to leap, to run, to tear through the valley until her chains were ash. But the man in me faltered, crushed beneath the weight of my own fear. This was what I had dreaded since the moment I claimed her. Not salvation, but ruin. Ronan turned in the saddle, mocking, daring. "Come, Travis. Watch as your Luna begs for mercy at another alpha's feet. This is the price of your weakness." But Celeste lifted her head, her voice ringing across the valley, cutting through the jeers. "I will never be your Luna, Ronan. Bite me, chain me, burn me alive. I will never be yours. My bond is mine to give. And I gave it to him." Her eyes found mine across the distance, fierce and unbroken. And in that instant, despair hollowed me. Not because she was weak, but because she was stronger than I had ever been. Stronger than the king who could not save her. Ronan's laughter still echoed up from the valley, cruel and sharp as a blade. Celeste stood chained at his side, her defiance blazing even as he promised to sink his teeth into her, to make her his Luna by force. My men shifted uneasily along the wall, their fear thick as smoke. My hands trembled on the stone, blood dripping from where my nails had broken against it. For too long I had believed the lie. Love is weakness. Bonds are chains. That belief had kept me cold, kept me safe, until it left her in his grasp. My wolf surged then, a roar inside me that shattered the last of my restraint. He tore through my chest, demanding I move, demanding I fight. And I knew with perfect, blistering clarity. She was not my ruin. She was my strength. I rose to my full height, lifting my voice so it carried down the walls and across the valley. "Ronan!" I bellowed, every syllable thunder. "You think you can take what is mine? You think bonds can be forged by force? You are wrong. She chose me, and I will burn this valley to ash before I let you touch her." The Iron Fang camp hissed and jeered, but Ronan's smile only sharpened. He had wanted to break me. Instead, he had awoken me. I turned to my men, my voice a growl that left no space for doubt. "Gather steel, ready the wolves. We go to them, not as broken survivors, but as the king's pack. We will take her back, or we will die with her." Levi staggered forward, bandaged and pale, but his sword rang true as he struck it against his shield. "For the king!" Others followed, voices rising, blades clashing in a roar that shook the very stone beneath us. Fear was gone, replaced by fire. I lifted my sword high, its bloodied edge glinting in torchlight. For the first time, I did not fear the bond. I embraced it. She was mine, and I was hers. And that truth would be the weapon that ended Ronan. The war for my Luna had begun. I had a renewed strength I didn't even understand. I did not waste time. The moment Ronan's smile cut across the valley, the moment Celeste's voice rang with defiance, the wolf inside me ripped free. My feet carried me down the battlements, through the shattered gates, and into the night. Levi shouted after me, soldiers scrambling to follow, but I barely heard them. My heartbeat was a drum, my breath fire, my blood a howl. Steel in my fist, claws beneath my skin. The man and beast finally surged as one. The valley erupted as I hit the field. Iron Fang traders swarmed, steel flashing, torches blazing. I met them head on. A sword slashed down. I caught it on my blade, shoved the wolf inside me forward, and tore through the man with a strike so brutal his chest split. Another lunged, fangs bared, but I was faster. I slammed him to the ground, teeth snapping at his throat, my wolf howling as his lifeblood soaked the dirt. They came at me in waves, shouting, cursing, snarling, but they could not slow me. For the first time, there was no war between the alpha and the beast. I was the beast. I was the alpha. Unstoppable. Through the chaos, I glimpsed her. Celeste, still chained, still burning. Every strike, every kill, every breath pulled me closer to her. A spear grazed my side, fire lancing through muscle. I didn't falter. I ripped it from the traitor's grip, spun, and drove it through his chest. Another tried to flank me. I cut him down before he could even scream. Behind me, my loyal wolves had joined the charge. Levi's blade flashed, shields locked, our roar shaking the valley. But it was my fury that carved the path, blood and fire trailing in my wake. And then, through the haze of smoke and slaughter, he stepped forward. Alpha Ronin. Clad in iron, eyes gleaming cold as stone, his lips curled in that same cruel smile. He shoved his warriors aside, gaze fixed on me alone. "At last," he said, voice cutting through the din. "The king who hides behind fear finally crawls to face me." I raised my blood-soaked blade, my wolf snarling with me, one voice, one will. "Not fear," I growled. "Love, and it will be the death of you." The enemy Alpha drew his sword. The valley stilled. The duel had begun. The field hushed as if the earth itself held its breath. Smoke coiled and every eye turned to the two of us. Alpha kings, blades gleaming, wolves snarling beneath our skin. Ronin's smile cut through the silence. "I will take her as you watch, Travis. I will bite her throat, bind her blood, and when she carries my mark, your reign will be nothing but ash." My grip tightened on my sword, rage thrumming like lightning in my veins. "Then you'll die with her name on your tongue." He lunged first, steel flashing. I met him with a crash that shook through bone and blade. Sparks burst as our swords scraped, strength against strength, neither yielding. My arms burned, but I shoved forward, teeth bared, wolf snarling in unison with me. Ronin twisted, his blade skimming my ribs, hot pain searing across skin. I staggered, breath sharp, but my wolf surged, lending me speed. I ducked his next swing, slammed my shoulder into his chest, and drove him back into the dirt. The Iron Fangs roared for their alpha. My wolves howled for me. The valley became an arena. Ronin rose, spitting blood, his eyes glinting with cruel delight. Stronger than I thought. But strength alone will not save her. He feinted left, then came low, his blade slicing my thigh. My leg buckled, hot agony ripping through muscle. He pressed the advantage, striking again and again, steel raining down like a storm. I blocked, parried, teeth clenched as sparks lit the night. Each clash rattled my bones. Each step drove me closer to the edge. Then, I heard her voice. "Travis." Celeste, shackled, bruised, but unbroken. Her cry split the noise, her defiance threading through my veins like fire. My wolf roared with her. Pain became nothing, fear became ash. I launched forward with feral strength, driving Ronin back, my blade slashing across his arm. His blood sprayed, hot and dark, staining the dirt. We circled, panting, swords slick with crimson. He grinned despite the wound. "Even if you kill me, she will never be free. The council will turn on you. They already whisper, you'll fall." "Then I'll fall with her," I snarled. "But not today." I attacked, faster, wilder, my wolf and I one storm of steel. Our blades sang in fury, each strike a promise, each roar a vow. I slammed my hilt into his jaw, heard the crack of bone, then cut across his chest. He reeled, stumbling, but still he swung, mad, desperate, vicious. We clashed again. His blade nicked my shoulder, mine tore across his thigh. Blood pooled around us, the ground slick with it. We fought knee-deep in it, two alphas refusing to break. And then, his guard slipped, just for a breath. I seized it, My wolf surged, my blade drove deep into his side, sliding between ribs. His eyes widened, shock breaking the predator's calm. He gasped, blood bubbling from his lips. I wrenched the sword free and drove him to his knees. My breath came ragged, vision blurred, but my voice carried, thunderous. This is for every chain you forged. This is for every lie you spoke, and this— I looked to Celeste, fire blazing in her eyes— is for her. With a final roar, I drove the blade through his heart. Ronan collapsed, lifeless, his crimson cloak soaking in the dirt. The iron fangs fell silent. I staggered, dropping to my knees beside Celeste. My bloody hands fumbled at her chains until they shattered beneath steel. She fell into my arms, trembling but alive. Relief crushed me, fierce and overwhelming. I buried my face in her hair, breathing her in, my wolf purring deep and raw. The valley erupted with cries, loyal wolves howling, traitors scattering. And above us, the blood moon rose, casting its silver-red glow over us both. I knelt there, battered and blood-soaked, my crown forgotten, my throne meaningless. I knelt not as king, but as mate, before my Omega Queen. The battlefield still smoked, littered with steel and the fallen, but the world had gone quiet. Only the crackle of dying fires and the steady beat of my heart remained as I held Celeste in my arms. Her chains lay broken at our feet, Ronan's body cooling in the dirt. Above us the blood moon rose, vast, crimson, and unblinking. Once I had cursed it as omen. Now it felt like witness. Celeste's eyes found mine, tired but fierce, and for the first time I saw no fear, no doubt, only trust. My wolf purred, deep and raw, content at last. I pushed myself to my feet, drawing her with me. My body trembled from blood loss, my wounds burned, but strength surged with every breath I took beside her. Around us, silence stretched as my warriors gathered. Even the Iron Fang remnants stood frozen, watching. I lifted my sword high, its blade red with blood and moonlight. My voice carried, ragged but unshaken. You have seen the truth tonight. You have seen betrayal fall and tyranny end. This bond— I pulled Celeste to my side, her hand slipping into mine, her presence steady as stone— is not weakness. It is the strength that will carry this kingdom forward. Levi limped forward, bloodied but unbowed, and dropped to one knee. Luna, he said simply, reverently. One by one the others followed. Men who had fought at my side, men who had doubted her, men who had whispered of her bloodline, they all bent knee. Their voices rose, low at first, then thunderous. Luna, Luna. Celeste's lips parted, her breath catching as she looked at them, then at me. For so long, she had been mocked, sold, shackled like nothing. Now, beneath the blood moon, she was everything. I lowered my sword and sank to one knee before her, my crown cast into the dirt. My voice broke, but it was truth. Not my slave, not my burden, my queen, my salvation. Her hands trembled as she touched my cheek, her whisper steady as the moon itself. And you, Travis, my mate. The blood moon bathed us in red, and the kingdom roared. The fortress that had once echoed only with steel and silence now rang with voices, not the sharp bark of orders or the whispers of schemes, but laughter, steady and alive, spilling through the stone halls like fire after winter. The nobles, those who had betrayed me, knelt in chains before the throne. Some trembled, some still clung to their pride, but all of them bowed. Their rebellion had shattered on the valley floor, their ally rotting in the dirt. There would be no more councils of whispered poison. Not while I lived. Justice came swift. The worst of them, the ones who had signed Ronan's pacts, who had fed him my walls from within, were dragged outside and executed beneath the blood moon's fading light. The rest I stripped of lands, of titles, of everything they had wielded against me. Some were cast into exile, sent limping into the wilderness with nothing but shame on their backs. For the first time in years, I felt no need to look over my shoulder. No plots curled in the shadows, no knives waited in the dark. And through it all, Celeste walked at my side. The fortress, once cold stone and colder silence, had changed with her steps. Servants smiled again, guards laughed as they trained in the yard. In the great hall, where only grim feasts had once filled the night, the fires now burned warm, music rising with the clatter of cups. Even the air felt different, no longer heavy with fear, but alive with something I had thought impossible here. Hope. I watched her move among them, still bruised, still bearing scars, yet holding herself like a queen born. She touched the hands of soldiers who had bled for her, offered words to the servants who had once feared to meet her eyes. Wherever she went, warmth followed. Levi found me by the fire, his arm bandaged, his eyes steady. "Majesty," he said, voice gruff, "your reign is no longer forged by fear. They follow because they believe. In you. In her." I looked across the hall to where Celeste's laughter carried over the flames, and for the first time I believed it too. The fortress was no longer a cage of stone. With her, it had become a home. Night fell quiet over the fortress. The fires in the hall dimmed, the laughter faded to murmurs, and at last it was only us, Celeste and I, standing on the balcony beneath the blood moon's fading glow. She leaned against the stone rail, her hair stirring in the night wind, the scars on her wrists pale in the silver light. My chest ached at the sight, not with guilt, but with reverence. She had endured chains, betrayal, and the weight of kingdoms, yet still she stood, unbroken. I moved beside her, my voice low, raw. I feared love would break me. I thought bonds were chains, that devotion was ruin. I spent my life building walls so nothing could touch me, not grief, not longing, not hope. Her eyes lifted to mine, steady, soft. She didn't speak. She let me finish. I swallowed, my hand finding hers, trembling despite the battles I had fought. But I was wrong. Love didn't break me, Celeste. You didn't break me. You saved me. You made me see myself, not as a king clinging to fear, but as a man. As a mate. Her fingers tightened around mine, warmth steady against the cold stone. "And I never wanted a crown," she whispered. "Only you." For a long moment, silence wrapped around us, gentle and whole. Then I bent, pressing my forehead to hers, letting the wolf inside me hum with peace. No hunger, no rage, only devotion. I had begun as a ruler who believed love was poison. Tonight I stood as a man healed by it. The omega no one wanted was my eternity.